They say you need money to make money, but I can tell you this is a lie. And I've proved over the last couple of years, actually since 2002, more than 50 times with different businesses and profit centers, that it is simply not true. By the way, I'm not taking any property that I've bought during that stage as part of this that I'm sharing with you. In other words, I got all my properties for free as well. I'm talking about businesses. To start a business with no money. Therefore, you can start an investment with no money depending on your intent. Whatever you want and set as your intent, that's going to happen. And you don't need money to make money, right? And this is what I want to share with you today, is what I've discovered, how it works, and why it works. Let me give you a practical example or something that I'm busy with doing at the moment. 3 years ago, a little bit more than 3 years ago, I took on a challenge. Some of you may know about that. And I said that I'm going to turn 100 Rand into 500,000 to challenge some gurus out there. And then I'm going to take that and turn it into a property portfolio worth more than 10 million within a 5-year period, with no security, with no bonds, with no banks involved, just by applying the wealth creator strategy. And of course, there's a lot of people on Facebook and on YouTube that chipped in and that say, is it possible, it can't be done, it's nonsense. Well, it's now 3 years and a little bit later, and we've got the portfolio, and I can prove it. And that portfolio is giving us 200,000 plus per month income. This is what I'm talking about. This is the power. But here's the trick. I started with nothing because I've said this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to pledge more than 100 Rand for risk and security. I'm not going to go to the bank. I'm not going to put more of my own money into this thing because it's easy to make money without having to have money in order to start. I did not go to the bank. I did not use gearings in order to be able to do it. And this is the same strategy that I've been teaching since 2002. The formula for riches. How does it work? The Property Pro investment system. And how does this dovetail into one another? And this is what I'd like to share with you. But you know what? I'd like to take you back to where it started. In 1987, I was in a completely different place. In 1982, I was basically technically bankrupt. And then I started learning how to become a certified financial planner in 87. I was there. But I was at a very, very different place because at that point in time, I was in debt, in a ton of debt. There were no assets to basically back this debt. You know, what my biggest asset was my house. And I thought that was an asset until I saw, but actually, what's the bond on that thing? And what is going to cost me? And then during that time in 1987, the prices fell, right? I was stuck in the rat race and I had no idea how to get out. But remember, I was learning to become a certified financial planner. In fact, I was a certified financial planner. So I've done everything that the system told me, the educational system, the financial system, to do. But when I looked at it, I was in a negative. I wasn't in a positive. So in 1987, that's basically when I discovered the formula for riches. And I began to applying it through my property investments. That's the first place where I started. I only figured out later that you can do exactly the same thing in business. So once I understood that, I realized, but there's no reason to rely on luck or you need capital or money. I started with 1,000 Rand per month. Now, I've found a free property and then out of my own pocket, this is where the 1,000 Rand per month come from. I started putting that into the property and I calculate what is the IGR on that. And my IGR, my investment growth rate that I had to get, by determining my FFGR, my financial freedom growth rate. So my FFGR at that stage was 55%. If I could get a 55% growth on 1,000 Rand, I would be financially free within 10 years. Now, of course, we got more than that. So my IGR, my real investment growth rate, that 1,000 Rand that I've put into these properties, that gave me better than that. We upscaled that, and 7 years later, we were financially free. In other words, that's what I used. But at that stage, I was still under this impression, and I had the circus, right? That you have to put money in and that you have to work for it. But during that stage, I started picking up, but it's not true. You actually do not have to work harder for your money. If we can fast forward to 2021, At that stage, I took on a new challenge. Now, remember, I was already financially free a long, long time. I had the money, I had the thing. But I decided to take on a new challenge, simply to show people that with what we've got in 2021 and now, that you don't need basically money, 100 Rand. That's to start this challenge, right? Because in 1987, there were no internet, there were no social media, there were no automation, there were no tools like ChatGPT. Nowadays, we've got it. So by using exactly the same principles and the formula for riches, we turn 100 Rand into a property portfolio, as I've said, more than 10 million in less than 3 years. Now, there's no bond, there's no loans, there's no banks involved in this. I did not stand security anywhere in order to get that. I did not pledge any of my other assets in order to get this challenge to the 10 million. Now, we're talking 10 million, it's a little bit more than 3 years later. I'm not talking about the crypto portfolio that I've got within that challenge. I'm not talking about the businesses and the value of those businesses that we started with nothing. And all of that simply because I understand the formula for riches and how I apply the wealth creator strategy to, for example, property and cryptos and business. So, my friend, when people say that they need money to make money or you need money to make money, I've challenged that head on and I've done it many, many times over the last 23 years. I'm telling you categorically that you don't need money. What you need is a proven strategy. You need high-value skills and you need to have the right mindset. That's what you need. Unfortunately, no financial institution or the educational system is going to teach this to you. For the simple fact that the moment that you know that you're not going to rely on them, you're not going to work for your money, give your money to someone else, hoping that they're going to make you rich. You'll know that you have got the ability to be proactive and to let your money work for you so that your IGR is bigger than your FFGR. Now, people say to me, honest, but how does this wealth formula works? I'm going to make it very, very simple, the formula for riches, and we're going to break it down. There are 7 components to this. And, of course, you need to do it in the right order. First of all, we start with your intent. What do you really want? If you do not know exactly what it is that you want, you're never going to get it. You're not going to do the things that you need to do in order to get it. So, go to a place, sit still, define, why do I want this? What is it that I want? And what is the reason behind that I want? To me, it was financial freedom, way back in 1987. I wanted to be free before the age of 40. I was 30 at that stage. Right. I calculated back and I said, okay, what do I have available right now? Is it at all possible? I did not know if it were possible, but I said, okay, if it were possible, what growth must I get on my money? Right. So I had the intent to be financially free. And then I was willing to do whatever it takes, because the second thing is you must have the right belief system. So intent now beliefs. If you've got the belief system that I need money to make money, you're always going to work and wait for one day when you've got the money and you're not going to have the money, or I have to rely on the banks or someone else in order to give me the money. I hope that you can see. In other words, you have to work very, very hard internally to change your belief system, because the current belief systems that we've got, or at least that I had in 1987, would not allow me to even consider that you can start a business with no money. I would not even consider that. I first had to change that. And that perhaps is one of the biggest things and most difficult things that you'll ever need in your life, because of propaganda and because of this system, the financial system, the political system, even the religious system. They are there to keep you enslaved to the system. Right. So belief systems, very, very important. And we focus a lot on belief systems and values and stuff like that. Then you must have a surplus. Now, you can't start the process unless you've got a surplus. Now, immediately you're going to say, honest, but that means I need money to make money. But here's the trick. The surplus is actually your temps, your time, your effort, your mindsets, and your skills. So if you've got the right skills and you are prepared to put in the time and the effort, you can change that for value. That then becomes your surplus money. In other words, now I've got the rands or the dollars or the pounds to start the process. But here's something else. If you've already got a job, like myself, that's why when I started with 1,000 Rand, right, I had a job. So there's an income. After I've paid my living expenses, like my taxes and the house and the cars and the petrol and all of that. There's a small amount of money left. And then I looked at that money that I got left to build my future one day. But I had a pension fund. That was compulsory, so it was actually part of my standard of living. I had endowment policies. I had retirement annuities. I had unit trust. But when I looked at that and I saw the growth of that and what I need on the money that I've got available that was stacked within these vehicles, I immediately saw, okay, this is not going to work, and that's why I cancelled all of that. Now, please, I'm not saying that you should do anything like this unless you understand what it is that you do. So I then calculated, but all I need is 1,000 Rand, and if I can get 55%, I'll be financially free in 10 years' time. Right. In other words, you literally can use what you've got. If you've got a surplus, you can use it. But here's a trick. What if you've got no money? You don't need money. In the Rainmaker Starter Business, we show people how to start a business with absolutely no money, how to generate that income, and then how to use that income in order to grow. In other words, the moment that you can create value by applying the TENS, your limited resources, you don't need money to make money. That's what I'm telling. But you have to follow the right strategy, which is the next point that I want to read, and that is a wealth creator strategy. Now, I don't know if you know, but there's only two strategies that is applicable to grow your wealth. The one is what we call an opportunity seeker strategy, or the systems strategy that they use. You work for your money and then you give it to someone else. They are the expert. They're going to put it in unit trust. They're going to diversify. They're going to put it in the stock market. They're going to take out and create products like retirement annuities and endowment policies and stuff like that. But then there's a wealth creator strategy that no one talks about because they dare not talk about it, because they dare not tell you the truth. And that is where you do not need money, but you need the strategy. And the wealth creator strategy is an intelligent use of limited resources. In other words, you have to become resourceful by applying skills. To do what? On that limited resources, to go from where you are, 1,000 Rand or 100 Rand in total, to where you want to be. In other words, let's say 10 million or a portfolio of 10 million in the shortest possible time, let's say 10 years. In my case, it was 5 years for this last challenge, which we have achieved in 3 years with the least amount of risk. What is risk? Risk is the most important part about this equation, except for your intent. Risk is when you do not understand what you're doing. If you give your money to someone else, do you think that you understand how to invest? No. Do you understand the risk? No. The risk that you're taking is 100% because you take your money, you give it to someone else. You've got no control over that money from the moment that you gave it to them. And no control. I hope it makes sense, because therefore you are taking all the risk. The risk is yours, but you've got no opportunity to learn the skills to identify the risk and therefore to offset the risk, mitigate the risk, or even manage the risk. On top of that, you've got no way to get a higher growth. You are 100% totally dependent on someone else. This is a recipe for disaster, because you're not prepared to take responsibility. When I understood that principle in 1987, my life changed. And this is where the wealth creator strategy comes from. So the next one is then I have to leverage. In other words, now I have to actually lower the risk. In any investment, I have to determine the risk, and then I have to say, okay, but how can I lower it? Your skills can do it. But there are 4 high-value skills. High-value mental skill. Because if that is not in place, you're not going to do anything. Then we start always with income. You need to generate more income to create a surplus. Or you need to create the income in order to use that surplus to start the process. Then you turn the income into a business. Then you turn high-value business skills, separate skills. Then you turn that into high-value investments. Now, my high-value investment skills is I'm using my business as one of my investments. That's why I've said in this challenge, we've got businesses that's not even being valued in order to get to the 10 million valuation. Right. On top of that, I am in cryptos and I'm in property, but there's a sequence. First of all, it's enough business income and therefore grow the business. You take the surplus of that, use that for security, or in my case, you can use it by having enough income you can generate after tax and simply get to property. Once you've got the property, you can leverage the property against, for example, in my case, the cryptocurrencies. I hope that you see there's a sequence. In other words, success is a progressive realization of a worthy goal. That worthy goal or ideal is your intent. Once you've set the intent, you must start the process. The quickest way to become financially free or rich or meet your intent is to get the right information in the right order for the level of the game that you're at. Then you have to apply it. You apply it to see if you've got the skill and the competency to give you your IGR to be bigger than your FFGR. If it is, you accelerate the whole process so that you do it in a shorter period of time. And you can do this over and over and over. Right. So once we've got to this place, now we have to check the right results. In other words, my IGR must be bigger than my FFGR. Once that is in place, we accelerate the principle. So if we combine this whole thing, I must have the intent. I must have the right belief systems, right? I must have or create the surplus. Then I have to apply the right strategy. In other words, take the right action, the wealth creator strategy. Once I've applied that, I have to leverage it through my skill sets to lower the risk and to get the growth as high as possible. Once that is in place, I have to check, is my IGR bigger than my FFGR? What are the results? If the results are right, now I accelerate it so that I do not have to wait for 10 years or 5 years. I can do it in a year or 3 years' time. And there's the formula for wealth and the formula for riches. That's it. Nothing more to it. That's it. So if you keep believing that you need money before you can start, my friend, you'll always be waiting. You're going to put your dreams on pause. You're going to keep on postponing. You're going to keep on saying one day. And you're going to do this year after year because this is just the way that we as humans operate. We want to stay within our comfort zones. But you know what? In the meantime, others start small, they take action, and they pass you by. And I've seen this. When I started, I took on a challenge many years ago, and I said, I'm going to take 5 cents and I turn it into 10 rand. And people said to me, you are crazy. 10 rand, it's not worth your while to put in all that effort, to put in the temps, the time, the effort, the mindset, learn the skills to get to 10 rand. I want to tell you something. You see, if you do not know how to turn a rand into 10 rand, how the hell will you know how to turn a million into 10 million? That is how we build the skills in the right level. And then you take the 10 rand and you change it into 1,000 rand. And there were people following me at that stage with that specific challenge. And then we take the 1,000 to 10,000, then the 10,000 to 100,000 to a million. And eventually in 8 months' time, we bought a property. And I'm explaining this in the Property Accelerator Masterclass, a property to the value of 1.8 million after tax, right? This is a power. So start small. First get the skill. Make sure that you can apply the skill to a small business or a small income. And then start growing with that. So what I'm telling you is you can't keep on having the same belief systems that you've got. You need new belief systems. Systems like, I don't wait for money because I know that I can generate money. I create wealth through skill, strategy, and structure. This is what I believe because I know how it works, and this is what I want to pass on to you if you are prepared to take the responsibility to learn this, to implement this, and get the results for yourself. I know that I've already got everything that I need in order to start. Why? Because I've got access to my inner resources. I am resourceful. Do you know that as a wealth creator, you were born by being resourceful? How did you survive the first couple of years? How? Somehow, your mom knew exactly when you needed what. You could not even talk. You could not express yourself. But for some way, you survived. That is being resourceful. Look at small children. I've got grandchildren. Look at how they operate. And you're going to see how resourceful those children are in order to get their way. We are children. We play. Money is just a game. We have to be resourceful and we play the game of life. And everything is for free because it was given to us. It's our birthright. That's why we are wealth creators. We are part of the creation process. Our Creator gave us this ability to be able to create, to have new ideas, to have new concepts. It's incredible. You've got everything. I've got everything that I need in order to start because I know that I can tap into being resourceful. Right. Now, if you are done waiting and you are gutful, like I was way back in 1982, the first time in 87, Now, 82 to 87, I was in the financial industry. And I thought that was a way out. And it was a way out to a certain extent because suddenly I could afford a house and I could afford the cars and I could afford a great lifestyle. 5 years later, I discovered this was part of the system, the lie, that on a net asset value basis, I'm not better off. So if you are in this situation where you are tired of being bloody broke and always under stress and always working for the boss and always have to lower your standard of living and not driving the cars that you want and not staying in the houses that you want and not giving your family what you need and not treating your wife, and if you're tired of that and you're ready to learn how to build real wealth, I'm not talking about, having a mood of a post on Facebook and say, I've got a Maserati, but you owe millions on the Maserati. I'm talking about the real wealth, where that wealth is you have fulfillment, you have a life of abundance. And you're prepared to start right now. And from where you are, wherever you may be, maybe you haven't got a damn job, maybe you are not credit worthy. I don't care. The thing is, what is your intent? Do I want to change my life? Yes or no? Am I prepared to do whatever it takes in order to get that I want? That is how your intent is being tested. If that is the case, then join my free Property Accelerator Masterclass. I'm going to walk you through this whole process. How I turn 100 rand into a multi-million rand property portfolio. Right. I'm going to show that to you in less than 3 years. I'm going to give you the tools. I'm going to show you there's only one thing that you need to do in your life and only one thing that keeps you poor for the rest of your life. And I'll give you the solution. I'll help you to determine how to start this process. I'll share with you the wealth creator strategy, the formula for riches. We can start and buying properties with no bonds, with no loans, with no bank, with no security. Even if you haven't got a job, of course, you need to have the right mindsets and belief systems to be able to do it. Otherwise, even if you know how to do it, you're not going to do it. So everyone that stays to the end of this masterclass, the Property Accelerator Masterclass, I'm going to give you my Formula for Riches ebook, free of charge. Of course, if you want a hard copy of that, then I'll tell you just now what to do. But if you want to attend the masterclass, all you have to do is to click on the link in the description area, book your seat, and make sure to attend. So it's the same masterclass that I've shared since 2002. It's exactly the same system. And in the process, I've helped hundreds, if not thousands of people here in South Africa and around the world to become financially free and to master themselves in terms of the intent and stuff like that. Now, here's a way, if you want the physical copy of the Formula for Riches, you can get the soft cover edition directly from my office. It's going to cost you 1,450 Rand. You simply contact the office, tell them, they get your details and make sure that you pay, and then we'll send it to you. But there's a better way to do it, and that is sit through a 2-hour presentation to see exactly how that applies and how you can apply it and the power of that, and then get the eBook version. Now, a lot of people prefer the soft cover, and that's perfectly fine. That's 1,450 Rand. Now, there's another way that I think that we can help you, depending on if you want us to help you to start the process, because we can't help you to do anything unless you learn the skills. You simply comment roadmap. Take the word roadmap, one word, put it in the comment section, and one of my team will come back to you in order to listen to you, to see where you are, and maybe give you like a personalized plan in order to start the process. My friend, what I want you to know from today's little, let's call it educational video, is that you don't need money to make money. You need the right mind map. You need the right belief systems. This is Dreyer. I'm signing off. Until next time, I want you to think smarter, act bolder, and live free. And then I'll see you at the top.